The offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs is a work in progress, and to be quite frank, the offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs has been a work in progress for quite some time now, and we might have our first move of the offseason. And it does not come by way of Trey Smith leaving. It does not come by way of the Kansas City Chiefs drafting or signing a left tackle. It comes by the way of a position change, or at least that is what we are being led to believe. Cody Tapp on Twitter, X, tweeted, X'd, posted the following. We asked Brett Veach about if Kingsley could still work at left tackle this offseason, but he emphasized that he, Kingsley, has a lot of upside at guard. Obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs are expected to have an open guard position, with Trey Smith likely leaving in free agency. He's going to be given an absolute bag to move out of Kansas City, and that probably just is what it is. The question mark has been for a little while at the offensive guard position. Will Joe Thuney kick out to left tackle? Or, alternately, will Joe Thuney retire? So I think that we are unlikely to see Joe Thuney return to left tackle. I think that he is where he belongs at offensive guard, meaning that the Kansas City Chiefs do have a hole at left tackle. And I don't think he's going to retire. We haven't heard any rumblings of that to this point. So what are we led to believe with Kingsley Suamataia being an offensive guard? What note can we take from this? What can we look for moving forward this offseason? Well, this has to be taken with a grain of salt because ostensibly the Kansas City Chiefs, while I believe they're unlikely to be able to retain the services of one Trey Smith, they're likely in negotiations. So the organization does have to talk big in order to really hold their own place at the table. The biggest bargaining chip right now in negotiations for Trey Smith to come back to the Kansas City Chiefs obviously lies with Trey Smith, and that is, well, you saw what happened in the Super Bowl. It would be awfully disappointing if the problems that the Kansas City Chiefs have and on the offensive line were exacerbated even from that point. So, the possibility is out there that this is leverage being employed by Brett Veach, and the plans for Kingsley Suamataia are what they always have been. A reason that I'm not quite so sure that's the case is that the Kansas City Chiefs never even intimated moving Trey Smith to offensive tackle. The only person on the team that was ever even rumored to move to offensive tackle and ended up doing so was Joe Thuney, ended up playing left tackle. Since Trey Smith has been in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs have had issues at both offensive tackle positions. Trey Smith in college, I believe, played some offensive tackle. It was never even discussed whether or not Trey Smith could make that move to offensive tackle. So I think probably the Kansas City Chiefs do not believe that Trey Smith has that type of upside, the upside of kicking out to offensive tackle. They not only talked about Kingsley Suamataia at offensive tackle, he played and started. He started 2 games for them there. He played much more than that. In fact, he might have started 3. I don't remember if he started the last week of the season or not, but I don't think he did. But he started 2 games at offensive tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs, at left tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. So the organization probably at least still believes there is that type of athlete in Kingsley Suamataia, even if he is only going to play the offensive guard position. It is also worth noting that though Brett Veach is saying here that he has a lot of upside at guard, that does not preclude him from ever playing offensive tackle. It's possible. I think that if he gets onto the field as an offensive guard, he could still grow into an offensive tackle. But getting on the field and getting that experience is paramount, regardless of what position it is that Kingsley is playing while he is on the field. If he is not able to hold his own at the offensive guard position after a few games, then he does not have that upside for offensive tackle. If he gets on the field and ends up dominating at offensive guard, then you have to believe, or at least wonder, whether or not that player is still alive inside Kingsley Suamataia, the player who had so much potential. Now, talking about potential, I wanted to pull up some offensive guards in the NFL and compare the athlete that Kingsley Suamataia is to those individuals, starting with Trey Smith. And I think you will notice the similarities here are stunning between Trey Smith and Kingsley Suamataia. Kingsley Suamataia, 6'4" and 5/8 inches. Trey Smith, 6'5.5", about an inch of difference between the two athletes. Kingsley Suamataia, 326 pounds. Trey Smith, 321. 5-pound edge goes to Kingsley. Arm length, 34 1/4 inch from Kingsley Suamataia, 33 5/8 inch goes to Trey Smith. That is about an inch advantage towards Kingsley. 40-yard dash, or hands, obviously, is Kingsley. Kingsley has monstrous hands. 40-yard dash. Kingsley with a 5.04, Trey Smith with a 5.11. 10-yard split of 174 for Kingsley, 175 for Trey Smith. Those are the speed numbers that matter most to offensive linemen, but Kingsley Suamataia on the 20-yard split, a 2.9, while Trey Smith had a 3.01, a much faster straight-line athlete than Trey Smith. Now, Trey Smith did not do the shuttle drills. He did not do the 20-yard short shuttle nor the 3-cone drill, so we do not have those numbers for him. But he had a 28-inch vertical leap. Trey Smith had a 31-inch vertical leap, 3-inch advantage to Trey Smith. Kingsley had a 9'2" broad jump. Trey Smith a 9'4" broad jump, 2-inch advantage to Kingsley Suamataia. And then Kingsley did 31 reps on the bench press. Trey Smith did 32 reps on the bench press. Stunningly similar numbers for these two athletes. Just a wild thing to see when you're trying to compare two guys and how they will do at a position by comparing the athletes that they are, and it turns out they're kind of the same guy, at least as far as the combine itself is concerned. Now, I went back to the 2024 draft and pulled up the highest drafted offensive guard from 2022. That was Jackson Powers Johnson. He was a second-round pick. So looking at the two, Kingsley has a 1-inch advantage. He is 2 pounds lighter. He has a 2-inch arm reach advantage, a 1-inch hand advantage. Jackson Powers Johnson didn't do any of the running things, kind of upsetting. But he does. Jackson Powers Johnson holds a 4-inch vertical leap advantage and a 6-inch disadvantage on the broad jump. He also did 1 fewer rep. Jackson Powers Johnson was, leading up to the 2024 draft, often cited as a potential first-round pick. Just the way the boards fell, it looks like he ended up falling to the second, and the rest is history from there. Now, I went back to find the last first-round offensive guard. I had to go back to 2022 in order to do that, and it was Kenyon Green. 6'3" and 7/8 inches, so Kingsley has a 1-inch advantage there. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up something on Jackson Powers Johnson here. Going back to Jackson Powers Johnson, in his rookie year, ended up playing 956 snaps of offense for the Raiders. So ended up absolutely being a guy who was on the field during his rookie season, being, I would argue, a little bit less of an athlete than Kingsley Suamataia. So that is what it is. Kenyon Green, 323 pounds compared to 326, though they're about the same weight. The arm length of 34 1/8 inches, that's about the same. The hand size of 10 3/8 inches, that's about the same. A 5.24 40-yard dash for Kenyon Green, that is 0.2 seconds worse, 0.2 of a second worse on the 40-yard dash than Kingsley Suamataia. 0.02 of a second slower in the 10-yard split, and then a sizable difference at the 20-yard mark. That 28-inch vertical compared to 28.5, 8.6 or 8'6" broad jump compared to 9'2", and then a big advantage here: 31 reps for Kingsley Suamataia versus 20 reps for Kenyon Green. Now, obviously, these are not the performance on the field, but in 2022, Kenyon Green played 824 snaps for the Texans. I'm assuming he was injured, did not play. He injured his shoulder in 2023. 583 reps last season. This was a guy, Kenyon Green, who was impressive enough that the Texans felt comfortable spending a first-round draft pick on a listed guard. Now, I did not check all of the offensive tackles. It is possible that in 2024 there was an offensive tackle drafted higher than Jackson Powers Johnson that ended up playing offensive guard, but those are the highest rated listed guards in those respective drafts. So what are we looking at here with Kingsley Suamataia? Well, at least as far as the athlete himself is concerned, he's a guy that measures right up with Trey Smith. He's a guy that measures right up with the most recent listed offensive guard drafted in the first round. He's a guy that measures right up with the top offensive guard drafted in last year's draft. If you're looking at Kingsley Suamataia as an offensive guard as opposed to as an offensive tackle, you're looking at a guy who has definitive athletic advantages. When you're looking at him as an offensive tackle, he's a guy who has good numbers. When you're looking at him as an offensive tackle, he's a guy that has the athleticism to start. When you're looking at Kingsley Suamataia, however, as an offensive guard, he has elite type numbers. He has numbers that put him right in line with a Pro Bowl guard like Trey Smith, with a former first-round pick at offensive guard. Very rare to have an offensive guard picked in the first round in Kenyon Green, and the very first offensive guard picked in last year's draft being Jackson Powers Johnson. Is this an exciting move for the Kansas City Chiefs? Absolutely not. It would have been great had Kingsley Suamataia been able to grow into the starting left tackle this offseason. This is a sign not only that the Chiefs are still looking at the tackle position, but that they are pretty sure it's not Kingsley Suamataia, who, quite frankly, athletically is the most impressive guy they still have on their roster. This is perhaps a sign as well that they will be moving on from Frank Caliendo. It is perhaps a sign as well that Hunter Nourzad is unlikely to be ready to start in this coming season. It is perhaps a sign as well that CJ Hansen is unlikely to be ready to start this coming season. I think if you are looking long term, the interior for the Kansas City Chiefs with Kingsley Suamataia moved into offensive guard is really dead set. You have, I guess, at right guard, Kingsley Suamataia. You have Creed Humphrey at center. You have, right now, Joe Thuney at left guard. But I think you want... Joe Thuney is unlikely to play until he's 45, right? So at some point, the combination of Hunter Nourzad and CJ Hansen will actually replace, hopefully, Joe Thuney. Then you still have either CJ Hansen or Hunter Nourzad on the depth chart as well, not to mention Ethan Driscoll, who I think is an absolute NFL talent. So maybe a little bit of confusing, disappointing, if not bad news from the Kansas City Chiefs with this revelation that Kingsley Suamataia is at least being looked at as the replacement for Trey Smith at offensive guard. But at least we have some clarity somewhere along the line, and we know that the Kansas City Chiefs will be unlikely to be targeting offensive guards in the NFL draft. They are able to concentrate that the powers that they have in the draft, the number of picks they have, and whatever trade capacity they have as well, on offensive tackle exclusively. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.